Welcome back to another episode of the Maple Dragon Podcast. I am your host, Mark Robson. Last week, we had begun talking about the realities of Xinjiang with fellow teacher, researcher, and traveler from Colombia, Fernando Munoz Bernal. This is the second half of the interview where we discuss the Western media's portrayal of Xinjiang and how it is skewed to suit a certain narrative that has little to do with the truth. Let's pick up the conversation where we left off. And the other thing I was thinking of, I'm not sure if people have a sense of how large Xinjiang is. Can you give us a picture of just how large it actually is?
Well, it's
Like,
it's
say,
this is one
relative
of
to
the issues that
Europe
is
or something?
also
Yeah.
it's about a third the size of Europe. It's about a third the
Oh,
size of
wow.
Europe.
One province.
So France, Germany, yeah, Switzerland, about that big. Um, and that leads to something that a lot of people don't understand, and that is used against China and against Xinjiang. So like, oh, the idea of forced labor or the idea of separation of children. It's
Mm-hmm.
a very big area with only 24 million inhabitants, of which the vast majority are in a few clusters, in a few cities with large numbers of people. But most of Xinjiang has a very low population density. So there's towns or villages with 2,000 people, 3,000 people, 10,000 people. So when they are trying to implement poverty alleviation, which was a challenge in Xinjiang, you gotta consider that fact,
Mm-hmm.
the size. How do you give better education to people? You have two options. You can build a school in every village, every town, every little place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But how many students are there that are from grade one? Oh, there are 5 students. What about grade two? Oh, there's no students from grade two. What about grade three? Oh, there's 10. So you can either build the schools in every single one of these places and give them whatever education you can, right? With one teacher or two teachers covering all the different grades on all the different subjects because you spread very thin, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
resources. Or you can build larger schools with more teachers, more resources, better facilities, and bring the students to these schools. Now, that's actually what takes place in Xinjiang. And it takes place all over China when you think about it. Offering room and board to the students
Mm-hmm.
is very normal in China. But people see that as, oh, they're taking their children away from their parents. They go to get a better education, better
Mm-hmm.
quality education, and they have to do it by going there from Monday to Friday. Sometimes, with the distances are so big, I mean, there's towns that could be 50, 100 kilometers one from the other. Well, are you going to be going back and forth every weekend? That might not be possible. So kids sometimes go for a term or they have
Mm-hmm.
like a break, you have the May holiday break or they have the October break. So they might go home during those breaks or during the summer, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
kids are gone for a couple of months at a time in some cases because that is the most cost effective way to provide the better education they can get. It is just that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And the same is applicable to the population that was easily indoctrinated. When you think about indoctrination, people who don't have jobs and who don't have an education, don't have a skill, are the easiest to indoctrinate,
Right.
right? So one of the projects and one of the things was, okay, let's give these people the training that they need, the education that they need, the vocational education that they need. So they taught them skills about cooking or working in hotels or welding or construct whatever skill they thought would be ideal was offered to this population in the same circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
Low density population, population spread all over the region. So look, this is the place where we're going to give you the training. So they would gather the people, send them to these places for a year, for 10 months, for whatever amount of time there it was necessary, give them the training, teach them the skills, and in addition to that, find them jobs within the region or in other parts of China and help them to find places of employment.
Mm-hmm.
It's these are all positives. These are
Right.
all positive things that are helping people to generate other sources of income other than just farming or herding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changing the lives of the people in
Mm-hmm.
Xinjiang. Obviously, Western pundits, politicians, news agencies, they look at that. They look how different it is from their countries and they criticize us and they turn it into human rights abuses, forced labor. It's that I ask people, how do you think the coastal areas of China developed when China opened up in 1979? How do you think Guangdong became what Guangdong is today? Do you think there were millions and millions and millions of people in Guangdong? No. There were tiny villages of 20,000, 30,000 people. But all the talent was brought to these areas. They were official government projects to bring skilled, talented workers to the region to give them opportunities and to develop Guangdong that way. So, this idea of mobilizing talent, labor, it's existed in China since for 40
Mm-hmm.
years. And nobody has had any issues with that. None of those Westerners who came here to set up factories or who came here to trade or to build OEM, nobody complained about
Mm-hmm.
that. Nobody had any issue thinking, oh, this is forced labor. These people have been mobilized against their will. They were making billions from this particular scheme. And this happened all over China. It happened in the East Coast. It happened in some areas, England, Hangzhou. All these industrialized areas developed that way. But now it's taking place in Xinjiang. And there are these issues with dark forces from America that are intending to stabilize in Xinjiang. So when they're doing the same in Xinjiang, now it's an issue. When it took place for decades in places like Guangdong, oh, forget about it. It's fine. Just more profit for us.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't remember the history of China and don't want to accept that this is something. This is the way that China has developed different regions of China,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing it in Xinjiang.
Okay. So, what do you think of these people in the West, sort of orthodox groups in Western countries, where certain individuals are come forward claiming to be Uyghurs? Do you think that those are genuine or completely made up, or is the reality somewhere in between?
Look, I haven't looked at every single one of the people who claim things, but I've looked at a few. Um, one of them was I forgot her name, Tersane. She gave an interview in 2019 to BuzzFeed, and she said, There was no physical harm. There was no.
And where was she from? Was she from
No, no, no.
England?
She went abroad. I think she's in America, if
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
mistaken. But
Yeah.
she was a Uyghur, and she claimed that she went to um,
Mm-hmm.
a vocational training center, and she claims first that
Mm-hmm.
nothing happened, that it was just the worst thing was not being able to access her phone. 2020 or 2021, BBC interviewed her, and now she said that she was kicked and that she became barren, and that she had been
Oh, okay.
tortured. That's what she said to the BBC. 2020 or the next year,
So she changed her
BBC comes
story.
back and interviews her,
Mm-hmm.
and now her story was daily gang rapes. So,
Oh,
I mean,
so it changed
exactly. How do
again.
you deal with that? How do you expect somebody to be believed when this is
Mm-hmm.
what they're telling you? There's another case in a recent
Mm-hmm.
paper published by Adrian Sands on labor, uh, what he calls it slave labor, or forced mobilization of work. There's this lady who says that her mother was sent to prison because she went to study and live in Turkey. And she says that since then she's seen her mother 3 times. So it begs the question, if her mother went to prison because she went to Turkey, how did she see her mom 3 times? Where? If she was in prison, she must have come back to Xinjiang. And she was the one who actually they were after, so to speak, right? How does that happen? But the best part of her
Mm-hmm.
testimony, this is a testimony that she gave at what is called the Uyghur Tribunal, which is not a tribunal, it's just an LLC in the UK. But anyway, her testimony actually says that in 2020, I think, she registered for a master's degree in Beijing. She was the reason why her mother was in prison, according to her. But she saw her 3 times in Xinjiang, and now she registered for a master's degree in Beijing. How, how does that add up? How does that add up? And this testimony is used by Adrian Sens to try to demonstrate that there is forced labor in Xinjiang. This is a researcher with a degree from Cambridge University, a PhD from Cambridge University. How Cambridge hasn't rescinded his PhD when they see the kind of research that he does? He's using this lady in her document, and that's the actual testimony that she gave, a testimony that makes absolutely no sense. So, look, as I said, I haven't reviewed every single witness, but most of the witnesses that you see, their stories
Mm-hmm.
are difficult to, they don't add up. They don't add up. But the most important thing to ask is all
Mm-hmm.
those people who are out there speaking, how did they leave China? If China tortured them, if China abused them, if
Mm-hmm.
China did horrible things to them in prison, why would China give them a passport and let them leave? I mean, what, do you know what I mean? Why would it make it easy for them to go
Good
out and
point.
tell that story?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Or is there an
Mm-hmm.
incentive in the West
Yeah.
for them
Yeah.
to tell stories? The police officer um, that was interviewed by CNN,
Mm-hmm.
Ivan Watson, he was the same police officer that also gave a testimony during the Uyghur Congress. In the Uyghur Congress, he says like, "Oh, I was not in charge of um, of torturing or anything. That was not my department. Talking to Watson, to Ivan Watson, like, oh yeah, we did this and we did that, and this was took place. Like, first you said that you were not part of that, and in the second interview you're
Mm.
describing the details and telling people how that took place, the torture and the rape and the whatnot. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. So
Mm.
that's all I have to say. Um,
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
have seen so much evidence of
Okay.
lies and twisting of stories by media, by these witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
that's all I present to people. I'll give you one last example. Bloomberg,
Mm-hmm.
they did a story on the polysilicon industry of Xinjiang, which is what is used to make solar panels, which then was sanctioned by uh, America,
Oh,
and
okay.
nobody's buying Xinjiang solar panels anymore in America. They went in the middle of COVID to Xinjiang,
Mm.
and they went to these factories trying to interview people and workers in these factories. But because it's COVID, they were not allowed to see anybody. They showed the reason, like, look, it's COVID, you cannot come into the
Mm.
factory, it's a risk. So in the video, they said, unfortunately, we did not speak to anybody at any of these factories. But what is the conclusion of that piece by Bloomberg? If
Mm-hmm.
you buy solar panels from Xinjiang, they may be tainted by forced labor. You didn't talk to anybody, but they may be tainted.
Mm.
How?
Right.
How can you call that journalism? And I take it one step further, Mark. In that same bit, in that same short 10-minute
Mm-hmm.
piece that they did, they invited an expert, some lady, via internet call. And she says in that video, there is little evidence that there is forced labor of in the polysilicon industry in Xinjiang. So the expert that they bring onto the show says there's just little evidence. But the conclusion of the piece is, oh, it could be.
Hmm.
And that's the thing. They are masters
Hmm.
of the English
Mm-hmm.
language. They fill their stories and articles and videos with language of uncertainty. But the regular people doesn't catch
Mm-hmm.
this. They just hear genocide. They just hear human rights abuse, forced labor. They don't hear could be, maybe, might be, perhaps, likely, probably. They don't hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they fill these accusations with. So it's
Mm.
it's what we're dealing with, is what China is dealing with, is what Xinjiang is dealing with, and it's what I try to tell people. Um, Engage your brain and listen to what's taking place,
Mm-hmm.
and come and see by yourself. Come and see by yourself. Spend time in Xinjiang,
Mm-hmm.
talk to people, see the people, enjoy the culture, see the
Mm-hmm.
diversity, see the cohesion, the harmony of the people, and draw your own opinion. I can show
Mm-hmm.
you so many examples of lies
Right.
and misinformation. The only way is for you to come here. The
Mm-hmm.
best way is for you to come here and experience yourself.
Mm-hmm. Now, you spoke of harmony, and it almost seems like maybe that's really what China's whole approach has been. Just, markedly different from a Western approach in dealing with terrorism. I guess using technology instead of, I don't know, hunting down terrorists with weapons, just using technology to check people, anyone who's suspicious, and so that seems that it's just such a different approach to dealing with tourism, not one that the West is familiar with. and it just looks so alien that I don't know. People get suspicious, I guess. Do you think? And especially when I mean, it's fascinating. You're saying these sanctions that were used to protect the Uyghurs actually cause the Uyghurs to kind of get suspicious of the West, suspicious in talking to reporters that misrepresent what's going on, and then causing other Chinese to support them, sort of replace the Western customers. And so creating greater
Yeah.
harmony within China, it's almost like the sanctions backfired in a way.
The thing with Xinjiang is that there's another component that becomes very touchy, is religion, is the idea that Islam is the root of the problem.
Hmm.
That's what China does not want. That's what China does
Yeah.
not. You can practice any religion you want in China as long as it's a religion that is registered and affiliated to the state. The state knows what's taking place because you see
Right.
in the video, for example, from Ilham Tohti in a classroom supporting terrorists. Now
Hmm.
imagine the power of being inside a church, being inside a synagogue, being inside a mosque, and delivering messages that are dangerous for people. The government has
Hmm.
to know what's taking place. And when you look at religion, there's only two possibilities. Either you adhere to the idea that we come from a deity, we come from a god, that we are the result
Hmm.
of the creation by a god, and as such,
Hmm.
mankind is subservient to religion. There's there's
Hmm.
there's a need to respect and let religious organizations do what they do because that's the premise. Or
Hmm.
you believe or think that a religion is a man-made creation. It's something that
Hmm.
humans created to explain the unexplained. I like to talk about the people from my part of the world. The natives used to worship the sun, the moon, the stars, the rain, the harvest, the things that were real.
Hmm.
When the Spaniards came at gunpoint, they got them to believe in the invisible guy in the sky. Uh, uh, that took place. That's the power of religion, and that's
Hmm.
a gulf between different countries and different ways of looking at religion. If
Hmm.
it's a man-made creation, it's something that mankind can regulate. It's something that mankind
Hmm.
can determine the limits and its functioning and its operation. It's not divine. It's mondial. Is from we created it, so we have every right to establish guardrails and guidelines. So that gulf
Hmm.
between the way some countries look at religion and the way China looks at religion, you can believe in whatever you want, but we will
Hmm.
control it. We will know
Hmm.
what's taking place and we will establish parameters for these churches and different religions to operate in order
Hmm.
to keep harmony. So what China does
Yeah.
it focuses on the harmonizing religions with the tenets
Hmm.
of the country. And this is something that doesn't sit
Right.
well with other countries. It just it's
Mm.
they see it as, oh, there's no freedom of worship in China. There's no freedom of religion. is the same as capitalism in China.
Mm,
You can be a billionaire, but the state, the
mm-hmm,
government will tell you whether you can do this or not, because that will be uh, that would negatively affect the people. So even in
mm-hmm.
capitalism, you see that the government creates parameters, limitations, and guidelines for things to coexist and to live in a way that everybody is unaffected negatively by these things. Religion is no different, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what the people don't understand. So they like the
Right.
term
Yeah.
Sinicization of Islam, as in like, oh, they're
Mm-hmm.
twisting Islam to make it just Chinese. No, they are making sure that Islam follows the tenets of China, mainly harmony. Is that simple?
Mm-hmm.
But again, people don't want to have that discussion. They look at it as, oh, there's no freedom of religion in China. That played a very important role
Right.
in Xinjiang as well.
It's kind of interesting because that's all the Western perspective. So all these Western countries have accused China of the genocide and so on. But you wonder why haven't the Muslim countries, like Saudi Arabia and so on, a lot of these countries have been praising China for the way they're dealing with the
Hmm.
Uyghur issue or the terrorism that they were dealing with. So that's what makes it suspicious too. Like other countries that are dominated by Islam are not lambasting China. They're actually being more supportive.
It's also important to think about the language that we use, because what China did was not attack the Uyghurs. What China did was attack the terrorists. Very important to understand that there are Uyghurs who are Muslims and there are Uyghurs who aren't Muslims. There are Muslims who aren't Uyghur. There are Kazakh who are Muslims. There are Hui that are Muslim. There's so many. So this was not something done against the Uyghur. This was something done against terrorists, regardless of their nationality, the ethnicity, or no. This was something done against terrorists. And as I said, not all Uyghurs are Muslims, not all Muslims are Uyghurs, but yeah, all terrorists are terrorists.
Right, right. Like no country wants terrorists on their soil. So that's where these other Muslim countries share the issue with China, where they have terrorists too.
There's an issue of the damage that has been done by Western media. It all started with BBC when they went to visit these vocational training centers, okay, that were somehow a response to the problem with indoctrination and radicalization, right? Idle minds that are easy to manipulate. So when the BBC went there, they were shown like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're trying to deal with, this is what we, and they completely twisted these projects and these programs. So and it hasn't stopped, right? The Everybody talks in language that is designed to vilify what China is doing. There are prisons in Xinjiang. Why wouldn't there be? But no, they're concentration camps. And I ask people, what is the difference between a prison and a concentration camp when you look at it from a satellite, like the people from ASPI have done? They've written reports. ASPI is the Australian Strategic Program for, I forgot the entire name, but they actually have taken photos of things that are just the schools or factories, and they all have this canteens and dormitories. So many of them were actually just factories or schools, and there's a lot. This is a prison. Not they didn't say prison. This is a concentration camp. So how could you tell the difference between a prison and a concentration camp when you look at it from above? Impossible. The only way is if people who have been in those places tell you what took place. Now, who goes to a prison? Somebody who broke the law, somebody who committed a crime, somebody who's not happy that he got caught, somebody who has a grudge. So once they go out, they start telling a story. There is zero, zero evidence of all these stories that are told about uh, the genocide and the forced labor and the cultural genocide. That's the most recent one. That's absolutely ridiculous. Um, and what I try to do is I try to explain to people the simple logic behind these things. Okay, when people leave Xinjiang, right? Some of these people that went to prison, for example, how did they leave China? I mean, did they cross the border illegally? And if so, why weren't they deported when they were found in another country? Or did they leave China via immigration with a passport and a visa issued by a consulate or an embassy that doesn't exist in Xinjiang? How did these people leave the country? Or were they extracted by special forces? Again, you got to question who's telling you these stories, right? Now, as to people, and as I was saying, the damage done by Western media is that people are afraid of a foreigner with a camera. Nobody, police doesn't stop you. Nobody stops you from shooting anything or from filming anything. None of that happens. But when you want to talk to people, they don't know who you are. They don't know. Mean by? Do you understand? So there's that very real fear, not of the government. Pay attention. They're not afraid of the government. They're afraid of what this foreigner is going to do with this information. How is he going to twist this information that is going to be used to hurt our people, to hurt our industry, to hurt our employment, to hurt us. So that makes it difficult to actually sit down and talk to people. They don't know who you are. They don't know why you're there. They don't, but they know that people have been there and people have lied and people have twisted what they've said and what they've seen. So why would they talk to you? Now, having said that, you can get a sense of how people feel about things just by talking to them about very indirect questions. Yeah, oh, how old are you? Where do you live? Oh, where do you study? What do you study? Um, do you live near here? How long does it take you to go to school? Like you get information just by asking simple questions. Do you know what I mean? What does your mom do? What does your father do? Oh, really? Like without actually asking direct questions, and as in, hey, what about the terrorism? What about the programs of? You don't need to ask those questions to get a feel for how they live and how they feel about uh, their country. I had a very interesting talk with a couple of girls because they ask, okay, when they get to know you, right? They're trying to talk to you and say, like, oh, so you're a foreigner. Do you like China? I said, like, yeah, yeah, I like China very much. What about you? And the answer is like, of course we like China. We're Chinese. What silly question are you asking? Do you know what I mean? There's ways of getting a sense for who they are, what they are, and how they feel about things. That it's not a direct question. It's not an invasive kind of situation. But yes, understanding the damage that media did to the openness of the Xinjiang people hasn't been talked about. Not many people think about that. I don't know this foreigner and what he's going to do with this information or these images, right? So it's sad. Yeah, I wasn't there as a journalist. I'm not going there. How to say, I'm not there to be doing the homework of a journalist or a newspaper. I'm there to see how they live and what they do, and how they do it, and that contradicts a lot of what these other people say. I'm not doing their homework. I'm not doing their job. I'm just showing people. And um, it's it's interesting because I have asked so many people, do you want to talk about my experience? I mean, journalists. Who would like to talk about my experience? Who would like to interview me? Who would like to know what I saw? How do we get in touch? How did you and I get in touch? People would like to know. I saw, hey, this guy has a podcast. Would you be interested to talk to me? Nobody touches me. Nobody wants to talk to me at all because it just it destroys their story. It destroys the narrative. And I'm not media, and I'm not the government. I'm just a guy traveling, self-funded, around an area that they're trying to present in a way that I can demonstrate is not so. And there are many videos that I've made about this. Many videos. There's this guy saying that, oh, in Xinjiang, you cannot say Assalamu alaikum. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? So I whip up my phone, go into a restaurant, and say, Assalamu alaikum. Malaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum. And it's like, but people believe these things because they're coming from NGOs in Washington, D.C. America implemented the original
Mm-hmm.
BRI, as I like to call it, to deal with terrorism: bomb,
Mm.
ransack, and invade. China has its Belt and Road Initiative. America had
Ah.
their own original BRI. Um, and I guess that's the biggest issue. The enemies that America created around the Muslim world in the way they treated the terrorist problem, the terrorist issues, um, that's coming home to roost. I mean, that's gonna hit
Mm-hmm.
America back because it's been decades and decades of destroying
Mm-hmm.
countries, families, lives, and that
Right.
only generates hate. That only generates a
Mm-hmm.
desire for revenge. So you can see how that, as tactful as it was possible, China approached this situation of terrorism, uh, trying to not generate these feelings of animosity towards these
Mm-hmm.
corrections that needed to be implemented. And that's what I try to showcase when I travel. People people are one with the police. They trust the police. They respect the police. They feel as Chinese as any other Chinese person.
So I guess he couldn't get into conversations about how the locals felt it because it sounds very paternalistic what China did. And you wonder, did they ever kind of work with local Uyghurs or have a discussion? Was there any kind of discussions about with government on like the best way to deal with the terrorism issue?
I'm unaware. I'm not aware of that. I don't have that information. But um, basically the way that I know how the government operates in other things, there's always ideas that are put forth, and they all get reviewed, they all get checked, they all get modified according to the development of the projects. We we often hear about, oh, China
Okay.
reformed this and this reform and that reform and this other reform.
But you're,
And that's what China does. They implement things and then they feel, oh, this is working, this
hmm
is not working,
yeah.
let's change it. That's your reform. Um, and where, where does the feedback come from?
hmm
Talking to people, just getting feedback from the people. The people who like to say that there's no democracy in China, um, they don't understand how China really works. China has a way of electing its leaders by representation. The person
hmm
in this community is going to choose the leader of that community. She's not
hmm
really voting for, are we going to send a rover to Mars? This
hmm
person in this community is not, this
Right.
farmer is not voting for, oh, are we going to build
hmm
a dam in the Three Gorges? No, she's voting for her local issues. And that's what matters to her. Is this person going to look after my
hmm
interests? Is she going to help me with irrigation? Is she going to help me with my crop? Is she going to help me
hmm
join the e-commerce? And so that's what they're concerned about. They're not concerned with big issues. But then that leader has to deliver, and he delivers, and then he gets promoted to a higher level, to a county level, to a prefecture level,
mm
to a city level,
Right.
to a provincial
Okay.
level. That meritocracy
hmm
and that election by
hmm
representation, only what is your immediate scope of influence, many people in the West don't understand. It, and the issues that matter the most to you, right?
hmm
So it's something that a lot of Westerners don't understand. But there
hmm
are elections in China. People go and vote for that one
hmm
or for that one, and they choose the one that can deliver the best results and the best solutions to their problems. The other side of democracy in China is what I was just telling you, is the consultative part, the
Right.
listening to the people.
The issues that you know.
You can Google how
Yeah.
many reforms there
Yeah.
are each year in China. And you got to understand that the only way that a reform
hmm
can be and exist if there is feedback. If there's
hmm
somebody saying this is working, this is not working, we got to
hmm
change this, we got to change that. China reforms at a speed that makes your head
hmm
spin. Everything is constantly changing. Everything is going in a
hmm
is being redrafted or redrawn and read. You see it all the time when you fill out, for example, your application for um, work permit. This year is there's something different. This year there's something different. Every
hmm
year is something different, something that is changing, something that is right. And that's the same with everything. You want to buy a car, so these are different. These things have changed. Oh, you want to
hmm
buy a house. Oh, it's changing. It's always changing. From where? Where do these changes come from?
hmm
From people who have
hmm
voiced concerns and problems and issues and then devise solutions. Nothing changes at China's speed out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my sense too. There's definitely constant change since I've been working here. I'm amazed that, I've just had some really last minute changes that I'm sure would never happen in the West. It just seems a different mentality here where, yeah, you have to be aware like everything could change tomorrow and you have to adapt. So anyway, so you have no idea if there's any consultation, but what you do know is you went to
I'm sure there
Xinjiang
was.
after the
I don't.
fact and people seemed happy. And
Yeah,
it might
I
have
cannot prove it, but my
yeah.
experience living in China. tells me
Mm-hmm.
there must have been.
Yeah.
There must have been.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, the result is you met people that seem happy, genuinely happy, and they might look back and think that was a difficult period, and maybe they have some issues with how it was done, but the result has been quite good, and maybe it was worth
Hmm?
it. So hmm, yeah, it must have been really
Yeah,
interesting.
it's that's what I can share.
Hmm.
The result,
Yeah.
and some of the explanations of how we got to where we are. Um, Again, I'm not a journalist and I'm not an expert. I'm
Hmm.
just a guy with a camera walking around showing people and talking to people.
Hmm. So did people, I was just thinking you have a Chinese wife, right? Like, was there any different
Yeah.
interactions with her versus you? Did she have any stories herself of how people talked to her or treated her differently
No,
or no? Okay.
no, it's just that we're always together, so
Oh,
we're
okay.
kind of like seeing like an entity.
Oh, okay.
So and the eyes go to the unusual. So boom,
Right.
that's the first thing, right?
Right.
Many people, many people, are you would tell my wife, are you his translator?
Oh,
Are you
okay.
her tour guide? I was like, no, it's my
Ah,
husband.
okay.
So there was this. They would see us together because we were
Yeah.
always together, and they would talk to her so like, "What are you to him?"
Hmm.
And then from there, just the conversation became just social, just getting to
Okay.
know people,
Yeah.
getting to know
Yeah.
what their lives are about and what they do and what not.
Hmm. So, given that you've traveled, I mean, you didn't get to go through all the provinces of China, but I believe the majority,
Not
right?
yet.
The vast majority. So, can you summarize how
Well, I still have a
Xinjiang?
year to go.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you definitely can. But at this point, can you summarize how Xinjiang was different from the other provinces? I mean, the security, we definitely got that. There's more secure, or it's more enforced, but Yunnan also has enforcement. Um, like, other than that,
Yep.
I mean, I guess they're different ethnic groups, but it's huge.
How are they different? Yeah, just life is hard. Life is hard in the desert. It's challenging, it's difficult. It creates a certain kind of human being. It creates a human being that is resourceful. It creates a
Hmm.
human being that is grateful. It's a human being that's hardworking. It's a human being that they're not soft. They're not soft
Hmm.
people.
Okay.
So
They're tough
you don't
people.
find this the tough people mentally, physically. They're tough people
Mm.
because they deal
Hmm.
with 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 an environment that is very difficult to live in. It, it's an environment that can kill you if you don't have a plan B, C, or D.
Mm.
If you're not
Right.
careful, so
Hmm.
that makes them unique. That
Hmm.
appreciation of life, how they celebrate the music, the color, the food, they're very very unique in that respect, in that sense. That's how I would say that they're different. The people have a different outlook in life,
Hmm.
if that explains it.
Okay. Yeah. No,
the
that
path
that gives me a
the
sense.
path to prosperity, it's harder, even
Hmm.
for the government trying to implement mm, poverty alleviation.
Right.
You see highways, you see bridges, you see tunnels, and you're like, how on earth did they build this?
Mm-hmm.
in 50 degrees Celsius with sandstorms. And how?
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're 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 tough people.
Mm-hmm. It must be more integrated with the rest of China now than maybe in history, with all this infrastructure,
Yes,
because it's so remote. It's
yes. Now
always
there's
been.
high speed rail.
Yeah. Wow.
There's high speed rail. There's airports all over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was in Karamai, and they just built a new airport. The day that I was there, the week that I was there, they just opened a new airport. There's interesting, so many museums.
Oh,
It's very
really?
important for them to, yeah, to tell the story of the Silk Road, to tell the story
Hmm.
of the differences that they had, the the
Mm-hmm.
the evolution of unity, um,
Mm-hmm.
how they agreed to be part of China through the centuries
Mm-hmm.
because it meant prosperity for them.
Mm.
Um, when they were just tribes and whatnot, right? We're talking centuries
Mm-hmm.
ago. So yeah, seeing so many, the importance to teach and remember their history, where they came from and where they are now. Um, I appreciated that. One of the first places that we hit is, let's go to the museum to learn the story of this place, to learn some of the way that they became who they are. Water management. Oh man, that's
Mm-hmm.
a whole other podcast. They devised techniques to bring irrigation and water from the glaciers in the north to so many areas in the desert in the south.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
That you've never heard of that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So yeah, it's very interesting to see how they have been able to prosper and live in a place that's so difficult, so tough, particularly the
Hmm.
south.
Hmm. Oh, wow. So did you actually get into the desert areas? I haven't heard you talk about the desert so much, more the mountains.
Yes, yes, yes,
So,
yes, yes,
oh,
yes.
okay.
Um, desert areas, there's many desert areas, and most of the highways run through the deserts.
Mm.
We had a couple of incidents. For example, we were going from Hami to Turpan, just entering Xinjiang from Sichuan. And as we were on the highway, there was a sandstorm, and the police said like, "Sorry, it's just not safe. You need to turn around and go back to Hami." Um, that was to me was like, I've never experienced a sandstorm of that magnitude.
Oh,
Like the whole
oh,
car,
wow.
everything was shaking on the highway. There were some guys
Hmm.
in motorcycles, like adventure
Mm.
motorcycles or touring
Oh,
motorcycles. You could see
wow.
them at 45 degrees trying to handle the gusts of
Oh,
wind
wow.
on the highway.
Wow.
Um, so that was a an eye opening experience.
Hmm.
There's an area of the desert where you actually need to register to go in. It's
Oh.
hundreds of kilometers, and there's no road. It's just a path on the sand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's very easy to get lost. So you need to
Oh.
register, and they need to know how many people went in and how many people went out. And there's a certain
Mm-hmm.
number that they can actually handle. And what you do is you drive into this area which is called Dahaidao, and you
Mm-hmm.
drive about 80 kilometers,
Mm-hmm.
and there's only one hotel. So the hotel is at capacity, no more people come in.
Mm.
So it's it's uh it's very interesting because even though it's as controlled and as they try to make it as safe as possible, things go south.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it was a few weeks after we had left and we'd visited the desert. We were there for 2 days. Um, we heard of 9 people who actually perished because they got lost in the sand. They got lost in the dunes. They got lost in the road, and then they made mistakes, as in they separated and they didn't have enough water, etc., etc. One mistake after another, and yep, people actually perished. So the experience of going to the desert is very humbling,
Mm.
but there's something about the desert that it just captivates you. It catches your. To me, is fascinating.
Oh,
The
really? Mm.
the pressure, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the readiness that is necessary. It's enjoyable to me.
Hmm.
Like the thinking of the next 3 or 4 moves. Like if we do this right now, well, okay, but if we, what happens? Like you're thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead of the
Mm-hmm.
consequences of whatever choice you make right now. Give you an
Mm-hmm.
example. We found a guy and his family. They were stuck in the sand, and
Okay.
it was in the middle of a sandstorm in the desert. And there's the hideout. We were, I don't know, 60 kilometers in, no phone signal, nothing. So we're there, like, okay, we have to help them. But what if we get stuck as well? But
Hmm.
anyway, you kind of like, okay, this is the best scenario. This is what we could do, and we worked it out. We actually got them unstuck from the sand, and we potentially saved them. It was a
Hmm.
very young guy that looked a little bit unprepared,
Hmm.
bringing very little children, and I don't know. It just looked like
Oh.
he wasn't prepared. It's just the way I saw
Oh,
it.
okay.
But we were able to
Yeah.
help them.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know. It's very attractive and appealing to me. The desert. It
Hmm.
teaches you respecting nature and always have a plan.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've heard about is it the Taklamakan or something like that,
That kind
as
of
being a
plan. Yeah,
really
yeah.
deadly,
Hmm.
like no one made it across sort of thing, or was one of, yeah, on the whole journey.
It's
It's
very
like some
hard.
of the toughest ground. Yeah, whole journey of the Silk Road.
Yeah, it's
That, yeah.
it's extremely windy in some parts. So
Mm-hmm.
you it covers the highway, it covers the road. So whatever grooves there were on the ground, they could
Oh,
be
yeah.
there now, but 3 hours they'll be gone. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you don't remember, if you don't plan and route it, for example, with a GPS or things like that, then it becomes complicated. It becomes difficult, and it shifts. I mean, it's dunes, right? So some of the dunes
Mm-hmm.
change shape um, from one day to another. So it doesn't
Right.
always look the same. It's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It requires a certain kind of people to survive there. The people who run the hotel, those are those are amazing because they're 100 kilometers in. They only see tourists, and they need to make sure that they don't mess up their supply list.
Oh, right. Yes. Huh.
They're responsible for
Wow.
people and themselves. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
diesel, all the things
Well,
that keep things running. Hey,
yeah.
you putting your life in
Yeah.
their hands as well when you go to the hotel.
Before we conclude, tell us a little bit more about living in China and how it relates to your deep love for China.
Look, I came to China in the year 2000 to work as a teacher. I actually worked in different cities before I decided to settle in the southern city of Dongguan in Guangdong. I worked there for a translation service center that had like some educational branch as well. And after 3 or 4 years, 2005, 4 years, I decided to start my own business. So I set up my own company and I started my work with children. So my company ran all the way to 2021. It still exists, but because of the double reduction here in China, we closed operations. But I just keep it open with a different business scope, which is just media and other stuff that we're doing. Through my time in China, I have done different things other than just teaching. One of the things is I've done consultancy work. So I participated in different bids from the local government to before the United Nations, there is something called the Livable Communities Award, something held by the IFPRA, or the International um, uh, Forest and Recreational Areas, which is a branch of the United Nations, that basically is a competition in between cities in which they share different ways of how they run the cities. And there's many different areas in which they work, from environment to heritage to um, construction development, a whole bunch of things. Now, during that time, I had to work closely with the local government, and we had to visit many areas of the city. As a city of 10 million people, 28 districts, and four core uh, districts in the municipality. And I was able to actually see how a city runs, because that was the competition. That's what we needed to put together: a book, a presentation on how the city works. And being given that behind the curtain view as to how complicated, how difficult, and how important it is to have certain guidelines and parameters, for example, in green coverage or forest coverage in the cities that are so developed in the south of China, it just blew my mind. I was very fascinated with how they run cities in this country. And it developed a deep understanding and a love and affection for my city, Dongguan. So when that particular competition ended, and we won gold medal, shall I say, because we do things really, really well in Dongguan. Um, I felt like, okay, it's great what the government does, but what else could I do? So I started working on certain different projects to see how I could help the city. One of the projects was, for example, one that was called Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing was like some fans, right? These hand fans. One had a thumbs up and the other one had a thumbs down. And the idea was to kind of create awareness and conscious as to how to be more, uh, how to behave better and harmoniously in community. So you see people parking in the wrong place. So you show him a card, like, hey, just do the right thing. Or you see people just throwing trash out the window. Hey, do the right thing. So that was a campaign that went on for a couple of months. Didn't really amount to much, but it's the mindset of what I wanted to do. I wanted to help the city. I started a magazine, for example. There was a bilingual magazine, sort of like to bring the foreign community and the Chinese community together so that we could share information and exchange. It was something that I did with three other partners, but always looking at how can I make the city better? How can we create a better society here? Kind of like my way of giving back to the city that had given me the opportunity to see, as I said, behind the curtain, how it worked. But perhaps the thing that was more significant was a book that I put together. I saw that there were road signs around the city with incorrect translations. So I started taking photos and I put it together in a simple book, explaining what some of the most common mistakes are. Some were just like incorrect translations or incorrect use of words when they wanted to say something. Or the other one was just, and the most common one actually was just mistakes that take place at the factory. So for example, um, a normal sign was EAIT. And you say, what is EAIT? But when you think about it, it's just an X, right? And somebody messed the X and it looks like an A and an I. So instead of exit, they print EAIT. But that's not translation mistake. That's just somebody at the factory who made a mistake and uploaded it incorrectly in the software. So yeah, I put together this book and I gave it to some friends in the government and I said like, hey, it'll be great if we can change the signs and make the city more international. Because it's always a little bit sad to see people laughing at China. You know what I mean? It's I didn't like it. So I was like, well, we could change that. That would be great. That was 2007, but actually nothing took place. just one of those things. Now, interestingly, we are celebrating these days the Asian Games in Hangzhou, right? Well, back in 2010, 3 years after I published the book, Guangzhou was going to be hosting the Asian Games, and my city, Dongguan, which is only like 30 kilometers from Guangzhou, was going to be hosting one event, which was the weightlifting, because we have actually one of the locals was an Olympic champion in weightlifting. So they decided that Dongguan was going to host that event, and the government started advertising, oh, okay, we're going to internationalize the city and we're going to change the roadsides and make them into perfect English. I was unaware of this. So I didn't know what was going on, but a journalist was aware of my book. So he posted an editorial like, you guys in the government, you've had this book for 3 years and haven't done absolutely anything. How come you haven't done this before? Blah, 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 blah. That tells you that people can actually criticize the government in China, right? So this journalist created this or wrote this op-ed basically criticizing the government, and all of a sudden I was hot. People wanted to know about my story, what I'd done, and what this and what not, and it became kind of like a yes, that's true, that's right. But anyway, the job got done. I wasn't involved in it, but somebody in the Foreign Affairs Bureau was in charge of that, and they changed the signage and everything went back to being proper English. So I was very happy of that. But it kind of like became like a thorn in the side. So when they started another project, which was called the Green Way, which is a bicycle pathway that 2,000 kilometers and it's all over Guangdong. It connects towns and cities and villages and whatnot. The government wanted it to be bilingual. So they said, like, would you like to participate in this project? I'm like, sure. So I worked for another year on and off, right, and doing this part of consultancy work. And I just, I became part of the city. I became, when you see your work printed all around the city. For example, the city slogan, the slogan of the city came out from my office. They had come up with a slogan, a competition amongst teachers, and they came up with a slogan that said, Dongguan's culture is created by you. And I say, when they, what do you think about this slogan? I'm like, within a second, I said, like, I don't think that's right. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you have to understand that China has 5,000 years of civilization. And when you say create, you create something that didn't exist before, so you're kind of like denying the existence of China's or the Dongguan civilization. So I don't think this is all that good. I'm like, oh, but we spend so much time in this competition. That was the winning entry, right? And I said, like, I don't know, I'm just telling you what I think from the words themselves. It is doesn't sound okay. You're denying the existence of the civilization. Perhaps you were trying to say civility. Dongguan's civility is created by you. But anyway, it became a big issue. I said, like, okay, we need to do something. What's a good slogan? I said, like, how about the future of Dongguan depends on you? So from that office, phew, that became the slogan of the city in a 15, 20-minute discussion. So again, it feels like you are part of making the city, part of building the city. And that's just who I am. You know what I mean? It all started from 2006 and just wanted to give back. And there's many aspects that I have been able to affect and effect to make the city better. So by 2011, again, somebody um, proposed my name as an honorary citizen of Dongguan. The thing is, they hold this event every 5 years, and every 5 years they choose different people from the community to become honorary citizens. Usually, people from other provinces or from other regions or from other countries, and there are very different reasons why people get elected, because you employ a lot of people, you invest a lot of things, or you have made discoveries in science and whatnot, but there's also contributions to society, and that's why I was nominated to this competition. And in October of 2011, um, I was awarded the honorary citizen of Dongguan recognition, and that basically changed my life. It was a different status. It was I became a bit of a celebrity in the city, and I've tried to honor that status ever since. And yeah, that's just my quick introduction to my life in China. Um, Mostly an educator here and there, uh, trying to do the best I can to create the next generation of Chinese leaders and Chinese entrepreneurs and Chinese society that can communicate with the world in different languages. So that's been my work for the last 23 years. Yeah, this project of traveling around China started in January 2022, and the idea is I want to create a documentary to present it to China as a gift in 2024 when they celebrate the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. We're just celebrating the 74th, so I've been working on this for more than a year, but I still have a year to go before I can present my present of love to China in October 1st of next year. That's the reason why I'm doing it. Yeah, but I think I'm going a little bit fast in some areas. Because I lost in 2022, COVID really put a dent on our plans. We were stuck for up to 4 months in different places because COVID was just wreaking havoc around the country. So it was difficult for us to move around. So we wasted a bit of time. The other thing is that being in Xinjiang, we had originally planned 2 to 3 months, but it's just so fascinating that we ended up staying 5 months. So I think in the end, I'm going to put the best documentary I can, but I don't know if I can cover everything that there is to cover in China. We'll see. We'll see. You all see what it looks like in 2024. It's basically about people. The title is "They the People." It's a contrast or a game of words based on the American Constitution, "We the People," which I feel is very centric. So I would like people to know they, the people, the Chinese people. So that's the title of the documentary.
Fernando Munoz Bernal, thank you so much for educating us with your experiences and wisdom. I am sure my listeners have enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it with you. And we look forward to your documentary next year.